Mr. Poilievre, good to see you. Thanks for taking time with us today.
Likewise, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks. You too. 2025, let's talk about it. It hasn't been the easiest year for you. The Conservatives did receive 41% of the popular vote in the last election. You have a lot of loyal support right across this country, which I'm sure you're very proud of. Mm-hmm. But you didn't win the election, and you didn't win your own seat. That would be a big blow to a lot of people in your position. Have you reflected on what went wrong?
Well, I have reflected, and you're right, it is a big blow to a lot of people who voted for, in record numbers actually, voted for affordable food, affordable homes, safer streets after 10 years of inflation and rising crime. And so we always reflect on how we can continue to inspire those 8.3 million people, a record number, who voted for us, but how we can inspire even more. And so my message for the year to come will be one of hope. I think people desperately need hope. Hope that they can afford groceries, hope they can afford homes. And many have put hope in me in the past, but we have to keep inspiring them so that more will do so in the future.
What I meant with respect was a big blow to you personally. Have you reflected on what went wrong in the campaign, in your own leadership?
Well, yes, I have reflected, and obviously, I think my goal and one of the adjustments that we need to make is that people know that I'm a fighter, but they need to know what I'm fighting for and who I'm fighting for. I'm not fighting for the sake of fighting. It's for fighting for the people.
I think that's perhaps the reputation you've developed
right.
among people who didn't vote for you, certainly,
right.
that you oppose for the sake of opposing.
And so what I have to do is show them who I'm fighting for and what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for that single mother who's anxious as she walks down the grocery aisle because the prices are so high she wonders if it will empty her bank account before she empties out her grocery card. I'm fighting for the young guy I just met in Montreal a couple days ago who says that a house on his street where his dad bought a home for $100,000 in the 90s now goes for $1 million, and he doesn't believe he'll ever be able to move out of his home. I'm fighting for him. I'm fighting for the mother who wants to get treatment for her son who's addicted to drugs. I'm fighting for those people. So it's
but I feel like you were fighting for those things in the last election
and those
too.
people.
Yes, but it didn't work for you.
Well, we did get the biggest vote count in our history, but I don't give up. So some people might say, just give up, throw in the towel. But the people I just described, they don't give up. The wounded veteran abandoned by his government doesn't give up. Neither do the families that...
You can't help them in the way you say you can help them unless you are in power.
Well, I sure can't help them if I give up. I have to fight on like they fight on. And their future is worth fighting for. That's why I'm in this. I mean, I come from very humble beginnings myself. And this only in Canada that someone, with my humble start in life, raised by a couple of teachers, that could get to this point. But I want that promise to be available for everybody. And that's why I keep going, that's why I keep fighting, and that's why I never give up.
And in the lead up to the last election, you were way ahead in the polls, if we believe the polls. You were on your way to becoming Prime Minister when Justin Trudeau was still around. When he left and a new Liberal leader came on the scene, your lead in the polls began to diminish to the point where, as we've said, you lost the election. So something happened in that time, and you can argue that more Canadians put their faith in Mark Carney as a leader than in you.
Well, what happened was that we got a record number of votes, and the highest share of vote we've got since 1988.
I know you keep saying that, but I understand that.
It happens to be true.
Yes, but I'm trying to move, if you don't mind, I'm trying to move a little bit beyond that to say, how do you broaden the tent now? You were fighting for, I think, a lot of the same things you were fighting for before, and as I said, you have a lot of very loyal support. Mm-hmm. But if you want to take it to the next level, if you're still leader when the next election is held, how do you change that equation?
Well, my plan is affordability, affordability, affordability. That is the single biggest issue facing Canadians after 10 years of Liberal inflation. So how do we take it to the next level? We go to more people and tell them that we're going to cut back on the inflationary deficit so that dollars go further. We make clear that we're going to cut taxes on work, investment, energy, and home building so that people bring home more and they pay less. We're also going to talk a lot, I've said affordability, but there's also the issue of crime. I mean, 10 years of catch and release has left Canadians endangered. We're going to repeal catch and release, lock up the criminals, and make it so people feel safe again in their communities. There's immigration. We'll be talking about the fact that immigration is still out of control and the government is allowing criminals and false refugee claimants to come in and undermine our security and drain our taxpayers. So those are all issues that we need to talk about in order to broaden our tent and win the support of Canadians for an affordable, safe Canada under a Conservative government.
Is it possible that in the last election, many Canadians just thought you weren't the man for the moment and that it's your leadership that's the issue?
Well, my leadership got us a record number of votes. I know you don't like me
No, you said it. I think that's the fourth time.
It is a fact, though, right? And I think we led on all the issues. We led on fighting inflation, opposing carbon taxes, unblocking our resources,
and you've
treating
accused
addiction.
The Liberals of stealing your ideas.
Not quite. I want them to steal my ideas. I would say that they have stolen
the carbon tax. That was the first thing that Mark Carney asked, and then as you wanted.
Right. He's stealing my words, but not the deeds. So let's go with the carbon tax. So he did back down and reverse himself and get rid of the visible part of the carbon tax. But we still have an liberal industrial carbon tax on farm equipment and steel and all the things it takes to build a home, driving up housing and food costs. He's also bringing in a new fuel tax that started this year, but it's going up to 7 cents a liter next year. So yes, he steals my words because he knows my ideas are very popular, but he doesn't actually put them into practice. Or let's take crime. He claims to agree with me on bail, but he's blocking his own bail bill in the House of Commons, and so criminals still get out of jail within hours of their most recent arrest. Or on pipelines, he voted against the very pipeline he was promising just a week earlier in a recent vote in the House of Commons. So it is true that they're stealing my words,
he didn't
but
really
they're
vote
not
against.
my deeds.
In fairness, he didn't really vote against his own pipeline plans. You put forward an opposition motion, which the Liberals said was a stunt, a political tactic. So it wasn't really. His plan is still out there. And by the way, the Premier of Alberta is very happy with it. What do you make of the fact that the Premier of Alberta and Mark Carney got along great when they met and signed this memorandum of understanding to build another pipeline?
So a couple of things. One, I'm glad that Danielle Smith forced Mr. Carney to flip-flop on the threatened Liberal production cuts to the oil and gas sector and their costly regulations on the electricity sector. Mr. Carney has not committed to building a pipeline. He opposed the pipeline in question. He testified against the pipeline in question in a parliamentary committee in 2021, and of course the Liberal government.
He wasn't in when? He wasn't
in 2021. I can give you the
Prime
video.
Minister then. He's the Prime Minister now.
Right, but he was testifying.
So are you suggesting that? I know you suggest that he's doing this. It's disingenuous. This deal he has signed, the memorandum of understanding with Alberta. You don't think it's real?
That's correct, and I'll give you the background. He opposed the pipeline. He testified before a parliamentary committee against that same pipeline. The Liberal government killed that same pipeline in 2016, and numerous Liberal members of the present caucus have already made public social media posts saying it will never happen. So he understands that pipelines are very popular, so he wants to pretend he supports one until after the next election while telling people that he won't ever build one.
And
I think we need
Danielle Smith, the Conservative Premier of Alberta, seems very happy with the potential of another pipeline under Mark Carney.
Well, I want to see the reality, and she said that under my leadership we'd be well on the way to getting the pipeline done.
Right, but
she
you
just
didn't
said
win
that
the
the
election.
other day. Well, that's why I need to win the next one, and then we can actually get some projects done, because this pipeline will be fantastic when it happens under a Conservative government. $30 billion a year in overseas exports, less dependence on the Americans, about $1,800 in benefits per family per year, and a stronger Canadian dollar, which will make our lives more affordable to buy homes and food.
And
those
why
are the
do you
things that we'll
think
do.
that you would get a pipeline built faster? What would you do to make that happen?
Get out of the way, because that's all that needs to happen right now. These
Get out of the way of what?
The pipeline construction. So the federal government is the only level of government that needs to approve the pipeline. Under our Constitution, Section 92, the federal government has exclusive jurisdiction to approve or reject an interprovincial pipeline. The reason it doesn't happen, even though it's wildly profitable and popular, is that there is no federal permit to build it, and the previously approved pipeline was then canceled by this Liberal government in 2016. So if we get the government out of the way, approve a right-of-way, the private sector can then go ahead and build a pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to the coast. And so all we really need to do is get the Prime Minister out of the way, because he is the only one who has the authority to approve or reject.
What about the duty to consult with Indigenous leaders?
We should do that.
You would do that?
Of course.
And what if after those consultations the answer is still no?
Well, the answer is given by the Prime Minister. And I'm
saying if the Indigenous leaders say no.
That I will thank them for their input, and at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to decide. And my decision, and I'm telling Canadians before the election so they can vote on it, is I will approve a pipeline. Nobody has a veto. Not under our Constitution. There's a duty to consult.
There's a duty to consult, but if the answer is after the consultations we don't want this, it won't matter to you.
It's actually, first of all, I wouldn't say it would matter. I would go ahead with the pipeline, and I would also clarify that when the Liberals killed this pipeline last time, in 2016, 75% of Indigenous communities along the path supported it. They overrode and overpowered those First Nations communities. And I think it's a really unfortunate stereotype to say that First Nations are against pipelines when the evidence is the overwhelming majority of them support it, although I think the media sometimes tries to stereotype that they're all against it.
I think at the latest Assembly of First Nations meeting, there's a unanimous vote in supporting the Pacific Northwest Coast Indigenous leaders who don't want a pipeline.
Well, the last pipeline from Northern Alberta to the Pacific had 75% of the First Nations communities along the route supporting it and benefiting from it. And we have these First Nations leaders in my own caucus who, for example, like Billy Morin, who is a former chief of the Inuk First Nations, and his community has been enriched because oil and gas has been allowed to expand. First Nations support oil and gas. Liberals and liberal elites often try to stereotype and stigmatize First Nations as being opposed to pipelines, but we need to get them built. I
think we should let Indigenous leaders who oppose it speak for themselves, first of all, but and there are those who do oppose it. So all I'm asking you is, what would you do in that case? Well, and it sounds like you're saying you would override.
Could I ask you what the Liberals did when they killed the pipeline? They overrode and ignored the 75% who are in favor, who were in favor of the project. So those who want to kill projects, they're consistently trampling on First Nations people who would benefit from the jobs, from the revenue for clean drinking water and for schools that would result. Liberals consistently use these as excuses. We don't need more excuses. We've had 10 years of blocking projects, making our economy more dependent on the Americans, driving down our dollar and driving up the cost of living. We need a Prime Minister who will take a clear stand and say, let's get out of the way and let's get building.
Let me ask you about what's happened in your caucus recently in the last month. You've lost a couple of MPs. Two of them have crossed the floor. One is resigning. Does that send any signals to you about your leadership?
It sends a signal to me that the Prime Minister is trying to manipulate his way to the majority that Canadians voters denied him during the election, so that he can go forward with a very costly and unpopular
agenda. So you're
agenda.
blaming Mark Carney for Conservative MPs leaving your caucus?
He has been trying to orchestrate and manipulate a majority that Canadians denied him with dirty backroom and costly deals so that he can implement a costly and unpopular agenda.
As you make these accusations of him, what are you suggesting he or the Liberals did to attract Conservative MPs?
Well, they've been telling Conservative MPs to help form a costly majority government so that he can go ahead with a very expensive and unpopular agenda that he would never be able to do if he faced the risk of an election. And I think that if he wants to have a majority to hike costs, to continue driving up grocery prices and deficits, then he should have the courage to bring that platform to the Canadian people for their mandate.
I'm talking about Conservative MPs who left your caucus. I'm not asking about Mark Carney right now, but
I'll address them if you want me to.
Let me just read to you what one of them, Chris D'Entremont, said. He concluded after leaving the caucus, this is from his statement, that there is a better path forward than being under your leadership, and he wants to be part of leading solutions rather than opposing everything. And in an interview, he said being in caucus felt a lot of the time like being in a frat house rather than being in a serious political party. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of it is I look at the words that he said about only weeks earlier about the Liberal government. He said that Mark Carney's grocery price inflation was, quote, inhumane, and that Mark Carney had broken his promise to be judged by the prices at the grocery store.
So you're happy he's gone?
And then he went against the words that he spoke and the voters who elected him for an affordable agenda. And then you have Mr. Ma, who said also that Mark Carney had an irresponsible deficit that was driving up the cost of living and making life more expensive for his constituents. And now they've chosen to help Mr. Carney add those costs on the backs of Canadians. I think at the end of the day, they should respect that their constituents voted for our Conservative plan for a more affordable and safe country, and that's what they should respect.
Do you hear nothing in the statements about leadership and the statements about how you're running your party? Are you absolutely confident that there isn't potentially a fracture in your caucus, that there may be others who feel this way too?
Well, I am confident in my leadership because the agenda that we're leading on is the one of an affordable life, a safe country, a united nation right across Canada, and that's what those candidates ran on in the election. That's how they were elected, and that is the agenda that we should move forward with.
Right. Okay, let's move on to another topic I want to ask you about, which is something that world leaders now have to deal with. Many of them are dealing with every day, and that is President Trump. He is a unpredictable leader. I think that's fair to say. People are not exactly sure if they're on solid ground when they're dealing with President Trump. If you were Prime Minister, do you think you would be able to have reached a deal with him on tariffs? And how would you feel sitting across the table from him, trying to renegotiate NAFTA? Imagine yourself in that room.
Well, I would feel a great responsibility to defend Canadian workers and consumers. I would live out that responsibility by getting a fair deal for the Canadian people, the aim of which is to remove the unjustified American tariffs so that we can sell our goods into the U.S. market, in exchange for which what we offer is a good, reliable Canadian partner for minerals, for energy, for international security.
What would you do differently that Prime Minister Carney has not been able to accomplish what he wanted to do at this point?
Well, there's two things I would do differently. One is how I would manage the domestic economy. There's a lot of things we could do now.
I'm talking specifically about the negotiations with President Trump.
First of all, Mark Carney has made unilateral concessions, getting nothing in return, going directly against his promise. He said he would have a deal by July 21st. Still no deal.
So you would stand up to President Trump.
So I'll give you an example. I can continue to be bewildered as to why Mr. Carney would have dropped our legal action against the illegal American tariffs on our softwood lumber. And since Mr. Carney backed down on softwood lumber, President Trump has tripled the tariffs on that, destroying our forestry communities. This is after Mr. Carney promised elbows up. So he went from elbows up being his single biggest promise in the election to saying just the other day, who cares? And backing down to get nothing.
He has apologized for that
He has apologized, but he should also apologize for the fact that since he became Prime Minister, not only has he not achieved his promise of a deal, American tariffs have doubled on autos, aluminum and steel, and tripled on lumber. Again,
what I'm asking is not to go over Prime Minister Carney's record. I'm asking you what you would do differently. You know, the Ontario Premier calls President Trump a tyrant. Is that language you would use?
I would focus on the business relationship. We got to get a deal. At the end of the day, we're right next door to the biggest economic force in the history of the world. My focus is on getting a deal and the best possible arrangement for the Canadian people, defend our sovereignty, reopen markets.
That's Prime Minister Carney's objective too, to get a deal.
I'm sure it is, but
so
he
it's
hasn't
about
achieved
approach.
it.
It's about approach, I think, at this point, right? And it's about dealing with someone who is unpredictable, the way President Trump is.
Absolutely.
So do you stand up to him the way Ontario's Premier is and call him a tyrant?
Well, the approach that I would take is how do we leverage the things that we have in our favor to get what we want? And let me give you some examples. We could be producing and selling more of our oil to the United States of America. We could be opening up and selling more of our minerals at market prices so that we enrich our workers and our communities while allowing the United States to develop its industrial base. We have the potential to produce more electricity than almost any nation on earth to power AI data centers, and we're a secure partner for that so that the United States doesn't have to worry about the security of its data. Those are all things that we have as negotiating chips on our side that happen to benefit Canada anyway. The other thing I would say to the Americans is the more free trade we have, the richer that Canada becomes, the more we can spend on our military to unburden the U.S. from protecting our Arctic waters. That would make us more self-reliant, sovereign, and secure, but it would also give an advantage to our partners south of the border in keeping both of us safe. So those are some of the bargaining chips we have, but what we have to do is offer them in exchange for gains for Canada.
Why in this moment, when we are facing what many believe is its existential threat on a number of fronts, when we need to find other markets for Canadian products, why not take a more unified approach as a political leader in this country, rather than so much opposition to what the Prime Minister is trying to do?
Well, we have taken a unified approach. When I became leader and when the Prime Minister took office, I told him we're happy to work with him and support him in any way we can in order to get the best possible deal with the Americans. I've said that to him personally multiple times. He's chosen not to take us up on that offer. And instead, we've seen an extremely partisan approach from the Liberals when it's come to the Canada-U.S. issue. Instead of working with Canadians and uniting them around the goal of protecting our sovereignty and our economy, they've been divisive. I want to unite Canadians for our economy. And I've put forward very practical ideas on how we can do that. Like, we could, for example, fast-track the approval of natural gas liquefaction plants to get tens of billions of dollars of our gas over to Asia and Europe to displace dirty coal over there while bringing down the dependence we have on the U.S. I've said let's rapidly approve pipelines and port expansions, pass a Canadian Sovereignty Act that would make us more independent from the U.S. so that we'd also have more leverage, get rid of the capital gains tax for anyone who reinvests in Canada. These are positive ideas that I proposed to the Prime Minister, and as I've said, steal my ideas, put them into place, and when you do, I will support that. I will support you in doing it.
Let me ask you about a test of your leadership that's coming up at the end of January. Mm-hmm. How confident are you?
Very, because look, I'm the leader that will restore the promise of this country. I share the values and purpose of our party to make this a country where hard work is rewarded. Food and homes are affordable, where streets are safe, and and I've been leading the debate on all of those issues.
Again, so those are issues that we heard you campaign very strongly on in the last election. What I'm asking you now is, a year has passed, mm-hmm. almost a year. In January, it won't be quite a year since the last election. But do you feel you have to do something differently, or it's the same messaging as the last campaign?
Well, like I said, I think people, they know that I'm a fighter, but they have to know what I'm fighting for, my why. Why is the most important question.
But people will be watching this, people who didn't vote for you, who will be watching this and say, hold on, didn't he just lose 2 of his MPs to the Liberals? Didn't his popularity rating, if you look at the polls, is much lower than Prime Minister Carney's? Is he the guy you want to have as the leader of the party?
Well, first of all, I think you'll note that yesterday there were polls out that had me ahead of Mr. Carney personally, and our party ahead of the Liberal Party, because people do support our agenda of affordability and safety. They know that our policy of bringing down the cost of living and bringing up Canadian paychecks is the one that they want to vote for. And so, you asked me what my approach is going to be. I am going to continue to focus on affordability because it is the single biggest issue in this country. And just because I campaigned on affordability in the last election doesn't mean we will not campaign on affordability in the next election. Because at the end of the day, people deserve to be able to afford groceries and housing, and they deserve a safe street to live on. So we're going to push forward the policies that matter in the daily lives of everyday Canadians.
Yes, you've made that point multiple times. Thank you, sir. I want to ask one final question. If you lose another MP to the Liberals, and I don't know if you know whether you will or not, because I'm not sure. There's no clarity on that. It may or may not happen. You would then be facing a Liberal majority government, and you would be opposition leader for potentially another 3 years. How would that sit with you?
Well, I think it would sit very badly with the Canadian people who voted against a costly Liberal majority.
I'm asking you, would you hang on as leader?
I'm not giving up. I don't quit. And the people of our party, the welders, the waitresses, the plumbers and police officers, the soldiers and small business people, they're the ones who I'm fighting for, and I'm never going to stop fighting for them. They will decide with their democratic vote. We are not a party that makes decisions through backroom deals to form a costly majority government that nobody voted for. So I'm going to keep on fighting for the Canadian people and their chance to have an affordable, safe future as long as my party decides and the members and the grassroots people decide that I'm the one to champion them.
Thanks for taking time with us.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas once again.